On today's Locked On Nationals, we are joined by our own Darius Dameron. You can catch him on Twitter at @the_game836. And on today's show, we'll be discussing CJ Abrams and get into kind of what we were all thinking could happen this offseason. And you might be wondering, what is that? Well, could the Nationals finally try to extend your all-star shortstop?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can check us out over on YouTube. Again, search Locked On Nationals wherever you get your pods, whether it's on Apple and of course on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast. As we were saying, we are joined by Darius Dameron from 106.7 The Fan, my co-producer over at Grant and Danny. He's really the boss. I work under him, but that's for a different discussion later on, I guess, in today's show. But Darius, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back on Locked On, Ryan. I'm honored and glad to join you. Talk some Nats baseball here in the offseason.
Yes, you know what? I mean, we are the only Nationals podcast to really run through this offseason. So we've run through all the storylines here, Darius. And as you know, I mean, this is, talking baseball in the offseason. If you're a Nationals fan, it's been tough. But I do want to revisit this kind of storyline that we have been talking about. And also later on in today's show, kind of looking at the 2024 Nats who will be making the switch over to 2025. Keibert Ruiz as well. Will MacKenzie Gore take a step up? That's going to be for later on in today's program. But start with CJ Abrams. And CJ Abrams, this is going to be one of those storylines I think will be slept on a lot this offseason. But just a few months ago, we were all beating the drum for the Nationals to please extend CJ Abrams, get this guy locked up. He's 23 years old, now 24. Bright future. You've seen it. You saw what he did in the first half of the season. The second half, he fell off just a little bit. But how would you feel if the Nationals do decide to try and extend CJ Abrams, and really just should they overall?
Oh, man, it's crazy because several months ago, it seemed like a no-brainer. It did seem like a no-brainer. The hot start that guy was off to begin the 2024 season seemed like we robbed the Padres of a potential next superstar shortstop. If you think about all the conversations that they were having on MLB Network and all the other talking head shows that did talk baseball, they were putting CJ Abrams amongst the top 10, top 5 shortstops in a lot of their list, and it seemed like a no-brainer. And then came June and July and a little bit of August and September, especially the end of September where CJ Abrams was no longer with the team. And things seem a little bit different now. And it's tough, especially because we're an organization now that has so much depth in the infield in terms of our minor league system with guys like Brady House on the way, who was a former shortstop, could play shortstop if need be, even though right now he's at third base. A guy like Seaver King, who we just drafted, and other infielders that are in the organization that, kind of make the shortstop position look like it's a gluttony at this point. Mm-hmm. So it's tough, especially with the, now rumored and what we know of in terms of his off-field issues, in which that got him a late season suspension from the team, or at least a break from the team. Officially, I guess it was a demotion down to the minor league system for that last week or two of the season. It feels like now they're in a position where he now needs to go back out and reprove himself in a way. I don't know if you can reward the guy with an extension after some of the struggles that he had toward the end of the season, on top of, again, the off-field issues that he had. So while that first half of the season was so great, it's going to be, I think it's going to have to be one of those things where they're going to need him to prove to them that after his scuffles in the second half of the season, offensively and defensively, and his issues that caused him to be removed from the team for the last couple weeks of the season, they're definitely going to have him prove himself again this season, which I think in turn sucks because that first half of the season, it's so hard to forget it. He was so good. He was literally in a lot of spots carrying the offense because he didn't have much protection. He didn't have the James Wood and Dylan Cruz, there for him offensively. He had some veterans behind him here and there, but those veterans are gone now. And at the moment, we don't know if there will be any other veterans to protect him. Right now it's him and the other young guys, as far as we know. Now that could change later this offseason. We could see other moves happen where we do get an additional veteran that gets in that lineup, but he has to prove several things. He has to prove that his off-field issues are behind him and that he is 100% a part of this team and 100% committed to being the best shortstop he can be. He has to prove that he can improve defensively. His defensive struggles reared their ugly head a lot last year without a premier first baseman there to pick some of his bad throws. And then he has to prove that his offensive struggles are not going to be a consistent thing. He has to prove that offensively he can consistently be that leadoff guy that Davey appointed him to be, and he took off once he did do that. If he can prove that, an extension should be something that they start considering, let's say, middle of the season. But at this very moment, I don't think an extension is where we're at with CJ Abrams.
Like, I think if the last week of the season didn't happen, to remind people, CJ Abrams was sent down and demoted to AAA after being caught at a casino up until 6 a.m. before like a 1 p.m. game in Chicago. It's really dumb by him. I think he knows that. I think he understands that. But if you were to take that away from this, Darius, though, I would still be all in on extending CJ Abrams. And in fact, I think the Nationals should do that. Although I will say this, it's a little bit awkward, to say the least, to try to extend him after demoting him really just a few months ago. And it wasn't necessarily because of his play, even though he was not playing to the best of his abilities. And who knows why that was. Maybe he does have a little bit of an issue going out. And if he does, I mean, he's a 23-year-old millionaire up in the major leagues on the road. I mean, I don't know what I would do in that situation, but understandably, the Nationals sent him down to AAA, and you could say, yes, it was because of the casino, but also he wasn't playing his best baseball up to that point. I would still say that the Nationals should go and extend Abrams. And the reason why that is, I don't want to get caught behind the 8 ball here yet again. I mean, you've seen it in years past with guys like Juan Soto. You've seen it with, and again, you weren't going to be able to extend Juan Soto, but your stars that you can kind of see are a little bit different. Like Trey Turner is a perfect example. I mean, you wait too long, and then all of a sudden, this guy's one of the best shortstops in all of baseball, and it's really hard to try to give him an extension. And who knows if the Nationals really tried to, but still, it's going to be hard to extend Trey Turner back in 2020 or in 2021 after really breaking out in those few seasons there. I just don't want to get caught in that cycle of what we already have had to do in years past. I want the Nationals to learn from their mistakes and not getting in on these guys early and try to extend them. And even then, they've done it with Keibert Ruiz, and we'll talk about him a little bit later on in the program today. It hasn't really worked out all that great. But with CJ, the guy is an all-star, and I do think that all-star tag there is a little bit out there. It's a popularity contest, but he was a legit all-star. This guy was great throughout the first half of the season. At one point in time, I mean, he was considered to be one of the best offensive shortstops in the National League. He was outperforming guys like Trey Turner, Fernando, not Tatis anymore. He's not a shortstop, but he was one of the better offensive premier shortstops there in the National League. I think that is what CJ can be. And I'm not paying him for what he has done. I'm paying him for what he could be. And I think that's kind of the mindset that the Nats and Mike Rizzo have to have, because again, you cannot afford to lose another premier shortstop. We've done it again with someone like Trey Turner, who was not a Scott Boras client, and you could have gone in and tried to extend him. And unfortunately, they did not. They waited a little bit too long, had to trade him back in 2021. I don't want to see that problem happen again. But speaking of former San Diego Padres and in that Juan Soto deal, we got to talk about MacKenzie Gore, Darius. I haven't really talked about him all too much this offseason, but I want to get your thoughts on if he can take that next step up, because, again, this guy was a top 10 prospect in all of baseball at one point. Let's see if he can do it again and live up to that hype. We'll discuss that after we tell you about some of our very good friends over at FanDuel. And, of course, guys, I can tell you all about FanDuel because the NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. For example, I've got a Jaden Daniels anytime touchdown score prop this weekend, and I want you to ride with me. And of course, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now we get back into it with Darius Dameron from 106.7 The Fan. You can catch Darius on Twitter at @the_game836. And Darius, we just talked about CJ Abrams. Let's talk about the guy who's always going to be with him. His buddy from the San Diego Padres came over from the deal in the Juan Soto trade, MacKenzie Gore. MacKenzie Gore, like, as far as ceilings go on this Nationals roster, like as far as pitchers go, MacKenzie Gore has by far and away the highest ceiling. Like, I think that's a debate that if you want to debate that, go for it. I just think it's not even a question at this point. But with MacKenzie Gore, last year you saw him do very well throughout the first half of the season, kind of fell off there in the summer, finished really strong in the second half. What is your faith in MacKenzie Gore kind of taking another step up this year and kind of being the ace that we all thought that he could be back 2 seasons ago?
I think for MacKenzie Gore this year was kind of what I wished we saw from CJ Abrams a little bit, where he had the hot start. He then had some, mid to mid-late season struggles, and then down the stretch at the very end, he got it back in gear. I think if we had saw that from Abrams, I'd feel a lot better about the extensions talk that we talked about earlier in the program, where if Abrams had, say, in September had locked back in and looked back to his April and May form, I'd feel really good about extension talk for CJ Abrams. I think Gore did that. Gore showed that he can, again, be amongst one of the elite left-handed pitchers in all of baseball. He has the stuff that you just don't get from the left side, especially from a starter. You'll get some of that from relievers from the left side, but the stuff that he has getting from a left-handed starter is kind of unreal. And again, he went through some of those struggles throughout the summer. Once we got into September and he was able to lock it back in, I think that proved that he can work his way through a rough stretch. And I think that's the kind of thing that, up and coming young elite pitchers can do, is they figure it out. They don't just let the struggles bring them down completely. And I like that about Gore. And we know Gore. We've met with him several times, over the years here since he's been here. We got time with him down in spring training and everything. I think he does have a tough mindset, which is what you need when you're basically tapped as the leader of the staff. And which he is at this moment. He is the leader of that starting pitching staff. He is the guy with the highest ceiling. He is the guy with the nastiest stuff in the rotation. And I think he knows that. I think he has the competitive mindset of, when I go out there, this team's relying on me because I'm the one. I'm the one that's been tapped to lead this organization from a pitching standpoint. And I like that he goes out there and handles it. Sometimes his emotions get the best of him, which honestly I think is a good trait, because it shows that he cares. It shows that he cares and he knows how important he is to the organization. And I'm looking forward to the next step here for MacKenzie Gore, because I think that the next step is the full season consistency, and that should be coming this season. And if he can show that he can go the course of a full season, hovering around the 3 ERA, continuing to lead the the team in strikeouts and being amongst league leaders in the NL in strikeouts, keeping his walks down. I love everything about what we got in MacKenzie Gore, and I think this year is going to be a huge year for him in terms of being the future left-handed starter of this organization. Will he eventually be the number one? We hope so. Will he likely be the number two? It's very, very likely. At the worst, he'll be a number three. But I think MacKenzie Gore is definitely a potential long-term face of this franchise from the left-handed side as a starter.
And I think that's going to be huge. And one thing I go back to 2 years ago was when Josiah Gray finished his first full season in 2022 with the Nationals. I want to say 2022, and it was brutal. I mean, he led the National League in home runs and walks. I mean, just was not good. Had like a 5.5 ERA. And I remember Mike Rizzo was asked about it, and he was like, you know, it was a pretty bad season statistically, and he was like, you know what, like Josiah Gray got through the year healthy. Jeez, my bad there. He got through the year healthy, and I think he won at this point. But Josiah Gray then went into 2023 with that mindset that he got through the year healthy. He's proven that he can be a major league everyday kind of player. And overall, that got him to an all-star appearance in 2023 and looked really damn good. He did kind of fall off a little bit in that second half, but MacKenzie Gore got through this first kind of full season healthy. In 2023, he was healthy, but kind of had like some blister issues. And it was his first full season, 100% healthy. But even then, kind of had those weird blister issues pop up a few times here. Now he was 100% healthy, and I think this is going to be the season where MacKenzie Gore kind of shows his stuff. And I think that is why this guy will be, as you were saying, kind of like that ace figure of the staff. Because as you know, Darius, this past week, the Nationals, they made a signing of Michael Soroka, who at this point will be in the starting rotation. I don't think that's going to be helping the Nationals. I don't think that's going to be taking pressure off MacKenzie Gore, because Michael Soroka was not good as a starter this last year. And we all know the Nationals need starting pitching help. I do want to kind of segue into that real quick with you. Like, what do you make of the Nationals making the signing and now plan to use him as a starting pitcher in the rotation?
Well, definitely remember Mike Soroka from his days with the Atlanta Braves.
And he was great.
He definitely had a lot of upside. He was really good. I mean, he shoved it on us many a times during his rookie and sophomore season in his years with Atlanta. And then, of course, he hit a bevy of injuries, which just were debilitating and basically took away almost 4 years of his career.
Yeah.
Now at 27, here he is on the comeback in a way after a season with the White Sox where, you know, obviously the starting pitching wise, it didn't go very well, but he made some changes once he became a reliever that turned out some encouraging numbers. I'm interested. I compare this to kind of signing Trevor Williams. This is like their new version of having a Trevor Williams, a guy who was a reliever and then wanted to become a starter, and we gave him the opportunity to do so. First season didn't go that great. He was gave up a lot of home runs. And then last season, we got a really good, refreshing version of Trevor Williams, who was basically locked in to go 5 to 6 innings every time and keep the score to 1 or 2 to nothing. And you know, it was like, okay, cool, we can do this. We're fine with the veteran presence in the lineup who's not giving up 4 runs a game. This is awesome.
Yeah,
I think there's a chance that Soroka can provide some of that, especially with some of the changes that he did make when he moved to the bullpen. If he can carry some of that momentum over into being, again, let's just say a 5 to 6 inning guy at worst, and keeping runs off the board, hopefully keeping guys off the base pass by keeping his walks down. I don't mind it. He's only 27. There's always a chance that you struck gold, and but it's just so tough because I think the expectation, obviously, this offseason was hey, we got all these young guys coming up now. Let's go ahead and add, some of the, I guess you could say, higher end free agent talent around these guys now. And it seems like we've passed the point now where it seems like some of that higher end free agent talent has been ignored by the team and they're going elsewhere. So this didn't really strike the chord of that higher end free agency talent. Nonetheless, it's the Nationals taking a chance, seeing if a guy still has something left in the tank, which is something that it seems like we do every year. We find one or two guys where we say, this guy once did something. Maybe there's a chance that he'll do it for us. Nelson Cruz and signings like that. Those are signings where we kind of take our chance and see if it works. And I think this is our version of that this season with Michael Soroka. So while I'm interested in what he could be and what he could provide, obviously this isn't the high priced front of the line starter that we wanted to get this season. Yeah. So we'll see how it works out. I'm happy for the guy. The guy's put $9 million in his pocket, so yeah. I'm sure he's excited about that, especially coming off of playing for a very lowly White Sox team.
Yeah, seriously. So we'll see what they can do with that. I mean, we'll have more discussions on this as the week goes by. And I do want to remind Locked On Nationals listeners that we are down to 3 episodes per week. So you'll be hearing from me on Thursday and as well as Friday as we enjoy these next 2 holidays. But let's get into this, Darius. Keibert Ruiz. Do you feel good about him going to 2024 or 2025 rather at this point? We'll discuss that after I tell you about our friends at Gametime. And Gametime is always focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience has that much better. And of course, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, and I can tell you all about the new super deal. Also, they have seat views before you buy in that super deal. I walk up to Capital One Arena before I go to Capitals games. As I'm walking up, I open up my Gametime app. 2 clicks away, I've got tickets in hand, ready to walk in right in time for puck drop. You can do the same for concerts, theater, music, whatever it is out there, you can find it over at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. Now we get back into it with Darius Dameron. You can catch Darius on Twitter at @the_game836. Darius, we now get into it with Keibert Ruiz as we wrap up in today's program. But what's kind of like your outlook for Keibert Ruiz in 2025? Will he kind of correct his wrongdoings over the last few seasons, get right offensively, be at least just a tick below average defensively? Because he's not going to be average defensively. He will not be above average defensively. But what's kind of like your outlook on him as we head into 2025?
Yeah, Keibert is one of those players where he gets a lot of flack from the fan base, and I'm not one of those guys. I've kind of always been a Keibert fan, okay. To the point where he's been here, or excuse me, as long as he's been here. It's the guy that gives you occasional pop. Doesn't strike out as much, or at least he didn't prior to last season. Doesn't strike out as much. Going to put contact on the ball. Is he the best defensively? No. But
in fact, he's probably the worst.
Yeah, he's definitely not. He definitely has a lot of work to do defensively. But one of the things that I can't get over from last season is how much time he missed from that illness that really debilitated him a lot in a lot of ways. Losing that much weight in a short amount of time from an illness that's no joke. And I just think that was one of those things that kind of just held him back all season. And I in a way, I just kind of want to give him a pass and let 2025 be a fresh start for him, a fresh chance for him to reprove that he can be, in that 5, 6, 7 slot area of the lineup and be able to provide some punch and drive in some runs and occasionally hit one out the park and get close to 20 home runs again like he did 2 seasons ago. defensively, I think the one benefit to him eventually could be that we're going to possibly see an automatic strike zone at some point, automatic balls in strike zone, which would help him. We know framing is not his strong suit.
No.
But if we have that automatic strike zone, it's something that we wouldn't have to worry about as much anymore, which kind of lowers the value of having a good defensive catcher. So I think there's, for one, he's on a good contract. Sure, it's a long-term contract, but the money value per year is not something that's debilitating to the franchise.
No.
If he can get back to more contact, less strikeouts, and bringing some close to 20 home run power pop, I don't see why Gabriel Ruiz can't continue to be the long-term starter at the catching position for the franchise.
Those are all great points. And if you want to get more great points, you can catch Darius on Twitter at @the_game836. Darius, I really appreciate the time today, my friend. And thank you for hopping on.
Hey, thank you for having me on Locked On. I appreciate you.
Of course. And you guys can catch us later on this week. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy the holidays. I will see you on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.